one of the big themes, Bach, I know you've heard it. We had a panel earlier today with some of the other Blockworks podcast hosts, and regulatory arbitrage is a big theme in general. Treasury companies, just generic, on-chain businesses. The theme being that, there's maybe inefficiencies in existing markets or just, regulation that hamstring certain types of businesses or limit what they can do. Curious your thoughts there. Like, how is, sort of regulatory arbitrage, how companies are coming to market or on-chain businesses coming to market impacting how you're thinking about like navigating the markets a bit?
So it definitely impacts pretty much everything because honestly, most of the stuff in crypto is like arguably all regulatory arbitrage, which I think there's like two ways to look at that. One is a negative connotation of, we're just like, what are the loopholes in the law? And like, let's get around it kind of thing. And then I say the positive interpretation, which I think is very often also true, is, hey, obviously these regulations are outdated and old. And what if we can build a system which actually makes those regulations just not relevant anymore? Like with technology, we actually solve the problem that those regulations were trying to address in the first place. So if we just solve the problem in a different way of like, hey, no, like your funds are actually held in a non-custodial manner and like there isn't someone to steal them from me. Well, then it makes sense that like a lot of the reporting and requirements that you would normally have around a custodian who's holding your funds, they actually don't make sense anymore. The unfortunate reality is like we're somewhere in the middle and honestly often on the side of like there's a lot of arbitrage and people taking advantage of the lack of clarity. Because obviously there are a lot of protocols that toe the line of, in particular, what is custodial versus non-custodial. And I like the places where that gets criticized, I'd say the most often is like all the L2s, which people criticize as like, oh, these are just multi-sig upgrades. And then in practice, what do you look at? Okay, what are most of the applications on top of the like decentralized chains like Solana? A lot of them are also just like multi-sigs with very strong upgradability.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. I think that as a space, people are definitely getting better about those things. The trend is definitely towards getting better. But this is one of those areas where I am very happy that regulators are actually going to set a good framework for us, because this is one of the areas where I think that we need this. There needs to be someone who sets a line somewhere at like what is a reasonable point of this is considered a decentralized and mature system versus this is you just have Coinbase controlling your money on chain, which is controlled by a contract by them on a server that they control, as opposed to like on the Coinbase exchange server. Like there is a practical difference, and we need to draw the line somewhere. The thing that I'm very, very positive on, which is still shocking to me from 6 months ago or whatever, is we've spoken to the regulators, like the Treasury and the SEC and them. And I was genuinely blown away by their understanding like of these systems, and their like very positive intent to actually set the boundaries in the right place. I was like genuinely very surprised the first time we talked to them. Like I knew that the administration was crypto friendly, they're putting smart people in, but from talking to them, like they genuinely are trying to set the lines in the right place and really proactively engaging with the industry. So I am hopeful. And then like, hopefully this does get, progressively pushed forward a lot more with, one is just, the SEC giving guidance on, what is a security versus not, what are the bounds, but then getting some sort of market structure bill passed this year would be like very, very important for this kind of thing too.
I'm happy you brought up decentralization. I feel like we've kind of stopped being very interested in it over the past year and a half. Like it doesn't really matter that much anymore. But I guess like regulators, I don't have any insight into what the SEC thinks. So they are very much focused on these things need to be decentralized.
Yeah, if you look at the language in some of the bills that are being contemplated right now, like they're trying to basically define, what is considered a decentralized and mature, or a mature system versus not. That is considered, it gets a sufficiently different treatment from a completely centralized protocol where, you're fully expected that you're custodying their funds and you need to engage in KYC and a lot of these things. What do we consider a decentralized system? And politicians are trying to figure out like what is the right line here, and that's things like not more than 20%. No individual entity has control in some sense of more than like 20% of like voting power, for example. You should have open source code. Like very specific and tangible things that actually do matter. I mean, the thing that I do not envy them, it is really hard to draw the line on these things. Like even as crypto people who like spend all of our time looking at the stuff, it's really hard to draw the line. Yeah. It really, really is. But I think that's where we need to go, is like, you need to set some reasonable bounds here so that people can start abiding by them. Because I don't think it is good for the space that, you can just launch a like one-of-one upgradable contract, which is like, it's decentralized, but like I could take your money out of it. And there's obviously, again, there's a full spectrum of these. But yeah, I'm very hopeful that it will get better. But yeah, no, like people are really thinking about like what are the exact bounds on this.